Welcome to the Genesis Science Report. I'm David Rives, and today, thank you for joining us as we continue to explore the intersection of science and faith. Tonight we'll actually be celebrating the anniversary of a landmark discovery that has shaped narratives and captured the imagination of the scientific community now for about half a century. You will also hear from a biology expert as we break down the findings of a recent study claiming to reveal evolutionary links between different groups of vertebrates. Now, trust me, it's not as ironclad as the study suggests. But first, there is one event, and one event only, in the history of the world that the entire Earth collectively experienced. And that event, it was a global flood. But with something so catastrophic, so cataclysmic, it couldn't have actually taken place, or so say the skeptics. Denying this event is actually seen as normal in today's world. The critics rail against its existence just as aggressively as atheists feel the need to rail against God's existence. They'll say that it's folklore, that it's fantasy, that it's foolishness to believe in a global flood on Earth, even though they'll say that Mars was once entirely flooded. But is that truly the case about this flood being non-existent on the Earth? Well, it's important to review the historical record before we come to any conclusions. And let's start with this. In the ancient world, every civilization held myths of a great flood that covered the Earth. These stories, found across the globe, from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, share striking similarities that should make it obvious that they have some type of a common origin. The narrative of Noah's flood, as described in the book of Genesis, it stands at the heart of this phenomenon, loudly echoing through the legends of many diverse cultures. This shared memory points to a historical event that left an indelible mark on humanity. And as we consider the flood, we will lay out a scriptural and a historical case that this event truly took place beyond a shadow of a doubt. First, what is the Genesis flood narrative? According to the Bible, God saw how sinful humanity had become, and He cleansed the earth with a flood, sparing only the righteous Noah and his family, and a pair of every living creature, 7 of some. Genesis 7:11 describes this deluge. It says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened." Therefore, Noah's Ark was built under divine instruction, and it became the vessel of salvation, let's remember that, amid this cataclysm. So the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus provides additional context in his work, Antiquities of the Jews. He writes, "All of the writers of barbarian histories make mention of this flood and of this ark." Josephus cites Berossus the Chaldean, Hieronymus the Egyptian, and Nicholas of Damascus, among others, to verify a universal acknowledgement of the flood. But maybe this was a backward Old Testament story. You might say, well, what about Jesus? What does He have to say about the flood? Well, you see, in the New Testament, Jesus does reference the flood in Matthew 24. He compares the days of Noah to the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered to the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. Now, his statement underscores the suddenness and the totality of this historic event. It was a divine act that basically reset human history. Who else mentions this event? The Apostle Peter also reflects on the flood in 2 Peter 2:5, where he describes God as having spared not the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. So Peter's account also reinforces the narrative of divine judgment and salvation through righteousness. This is not just an Old Testament story. In fact, you can also see this event recounted in other historically significant books, such as the Book of Enoch and Jubilees. Fragments of both were found among the famed Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, Enoch details the corruption of humanity leading to widespread wickedness. He speaks of God supernaturally warning Noah of the impending flood, saying, "Hide thyself," and then revealing to him the end is approaching and that the whole earth will be destroyed. Similarly, the book of Jubilees provides a detailed chronology of events leading up to the global flood. It also describes the corruption of humanity and the divine decision to cleanse the earth. The global flood narrative is reaffirmed multiple times throughout the Bible, reinforcing its significance within the Judeo-Christian tradition. In Isaiah 54, God speaks through the prophet Isaiah, referencing the flood in his promise to never again destroy the earth with water. Now in Hebrews 11, the faith of Noah is highlighted, saying that he was divinely warned of things not yet seen, and that he moved with godly fear and faith to prepare an ark for the saving of his household. In 1 Peter, again, the Apostle Peter draws a parallel between the flood and the power of Christian baptism. He says, who formerly were disobedient when once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8 souls, were saved through water. There's also an antitype which now saves us, baptism, not for the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So we see a striking pattern across the biblical and extra-biblical Jewish records of this event. But what about the pagan or the barbarian record that Josephus cites so boldly? We see mass evidence of the flood there too, and for many, this record may even be more convincing than the texts already cited, because if this was a true historical event, well then after the flood, as the descendants of Noah dispersed across the globe, the memory of the flood would have traveled with them. And the story of this incredible event would have embedded itself into the myths and the legends of the respective cultures that were established by the descendants of Noah. Each civilization would have adapted the story to fit their unique worldview and their religious framework, yet the core elements would remain remarkably consistent. And that's exactly what we see in the cultural histories of those that spread across the face of the earth, and why it matters for our day. Now, we've got a great show for you tonight, so I want you to stick around. We'll be right back for Q&A after the break. Just outside Nashville, the Wonder Center and Science Museum, with a top 10 planetarium, kids' hands-on activities, the teen favorite 1 million volt musical Tesla show. It's worlds of fun for the entire family. Experience the wonder. Explore the science. Inspire curiosity. Embark on adventure. The Wonder Center and Science Museum. The birds of the air, they were created by God in the beginning, but they are so diverse right now. He is being handed this magnificent creature.
This bird is designed. He is chock full of design. This doesn't just happen. He'll fly over your head and he'll land and you can't hear a thing.
Is that right?
It's incredible. God thought of everything when He made them.
On Wonders Without Number. Friends of Genesis Science Network, we started this channel to make an impact in the lives of both Christians and inquiring skeptics around the world. It has done that in unbelievable ways. Now, one of our viewers wrote, "I've been watching your channel for nearly a week now, and I would like you to know the blessing that it's been to me. I've never had the finances or the opportunity to attend a university, but I've been a believer for the last 37 years. Your channel has done more for my understanding of my faith than any book I've read save the Bible, and I feel like I'm finally able to attend the lecture classes I've always wanted to. Thank you so much for your ministry." I want to thank you for your generous support. GSN is no simple project and requires monthly commitments to keep it on the air. Please consider becoming a partner with us today. Just call 931-212-7990 or click Give on our website. We are making a difference. I'm David Rives, and you're watching the Genesis Science Network. to the show. This week's Q&A submission comes from Ben on YouTube. He asks, how is it that intelligent humans leapt to the conclusion that all that is required for building a human or other living things is proteins? No need for a body plan, no need for direction to build complex systems and organs, no need for genes to control behavior as they believe. Ben, let's talk about this for just a moment. When we think about the idea of human evolution, you have to understand that a lot of biologists, evolutionary biologists, say that there are so many different components necessary for evolution to take place. You have to have natural selection, you have to have mutations, you have to have proteins basically spontaneously generating, at least amino acids forming into these complex structures from non-living things. So in order to make evolution possible, classical Darwinian evolution, you have to have all of these miracles take place. But intelligent humans have leapt to this conclusion that it's just proteins, it's just sparks in our brain creating everything, that it's just chemicals getting together and forming life, simply because it took the scientific community by storm at the time of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin suggested something truly radical, and just like we see when things are radicalized on any issue, whether that be political, whether that be moral, we see that humanity tends to flock towards the sin position, right? They flock towards the position that makes them feel better about themselves. And in this case, it makes a lot of people feel better about themselves to think of themselves as mere accidents, just proteins, chemical interactions. I can't help what I do, I can't help what I think, there is no morality. I'm not saying that all evolutionists are like that. I'm not saying that all atheists are like that. But if you go all the way back to the very basement level of this ideology, then it goes to an anti-moral or amoral society. The idea that there are no absolute morals, which means that we can decide for ourselves what we think is right or wrong. That's one of the reasons that it's so appealing to society today. Listen, if you have a question that you would like answered, just reach out on our social media. You can email us at comments@genesissciencenetwork.com. Now, for those seeking to deepen their understanding of the creation versus evolution debate, this week's featured resource is a must-read. Glasshouse, Shattering the Myth of Evolution, is a comprehensive work by Ken Ham, Bodie Hodge, and a team of scientists from Answers in Genesis. This powerful book systematically dismantles the pillars of evolutionary theory while making complex scientific concepts easy to grasp for readers of all ages. It's grounded in the truth of Scripture. The authors engage with complex topics such as the true nature of science and its relationship to faith, the moral and the cultural implications of evolutionary thinking, and critical examinations of natural selection, mutations, and so-called missing links. Perhaps most importantly, this book equips believers to confidently defend their faith in the face of evolutionary arguments. You can get your copy of Glasshouse at the Creation Superstore by visiting creationsuperstore.com or calling 931-212-7990. And as the Apostle Peter said, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. That's right, we are stepping into the kids' corner. And to get started, picture this: a shiny silver metal combined with a yellowish green gas. Now, does that sound like something that you would eat? You already have. What is it? It's called sodium chloride, which you probably better know as salt. Yeah, now it's true that sodium chloride, or salt, is the mineral that is the result of a combination of sodium, which is a silvery white colored metal, that in its purified form, it'll actually float on water, combined with chlorine, which is a yellowish green colored gas at room temperature. Now, the salt that we typically use on our food is usually called table salt, which is salt that has had the impurities removed. Now, when salt is dissolved in water and then allowed to gradually dehydrate or dry out, it forms cubic crystals like we see right here. But throughout all of mankind's history, salt has been actually looked into as a highly valued mineral. All living creatures require salt for numerous bodily functions to correctly operate. Now, salt is known for its ability to flavor foods, makes them more appetizing. But before refrigeration became readily available, salt was of crucial importance for preserving meat to prevent it from spoiling. Salt was also considered so valuable that it's actually been used as a form of money or currency. History records that Roman soldiers were sometimes paid their wages with salt. Now, the Bible has numerous references to salt, including Job 6:6, which asks, "Can that which is unsavory or tasteless be eaten without salt?" In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus Christ is speaking to his followers when he said, "You are the salt of the earth." He said, "But if the salt has lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men." The great quantities of salt available in numerous locations all over the earth are another great example of how God has so abundantly provided all that is needed for His creation to not only survive, but also thrive and enjoy. So remember that next time you salt your French fries. Now, when we return, I'll sit down with Dr. Carl Werner to reflect on the anniversary of a paleontological discovery that has been influencing scientific thought now for half a century. Stick around for that discussion after the break. Limestone, we see it all around the world, but what is it exactly and how did it get here?
But let's delve a little bit into limestone. This was found by our good friend John Mackay, our mutual friend John Mackay, a few years back, right? He was driving through the Peak District and he shouted, "Stop!" And he said, "I've seen limestone." And the driver was like, "We're in the middle of the Peak District, it's all limestone around here." No, I found some special limestone.
On Wonders Without Number.
Join us at the Wonder Center and Science Museum for this month's Unwrapped event, where we feature expert speakers presenting scientific and biblical discoveries.
It pays to learn history, folks.
We cannot create an aircraft even close to what these birds can do.
This changes the way we do biology.
Discounted tickets are available for an after-hours adventure, including museum admission with kids' hands-on activities, a planetarium movie, Tesla experience, and pre-show entertainment. Perfect for the whole family.
What you believe about the history of the world is going to affect the way that you study the world today.
You see a mathematical order here. You see the orthogonal lines. You see the repeating patterns.
You don't understand what it takes to make a cell. That's serious engineering.
Come be inspired as you learn. The evening presentation is free, but seating is extremely limited, so RSVP immediately at wondercenter.org.
Squids in limestone in the middle of the Grand Canyon.
But the big problem is, how did those fossils get deposited in the middle of a 7-foot thick layer? According to the narrative, is something like 36 million years in duration. I'm replacing the narrative with some type of rapid smothering event.
On Wonders Without Number. Show. It is time to celebrate a truly momentous occasion. The recent 50-year anniversary of a discovery that has quite literally shaped the narrative around human evolution. Yes, that's right. Evolutionary scientists everywhere are toasting to the 50-year legacy of Lucy, the most famous ape man ever found. You know, at just 3.5 feet tall, it's kind of hard to imagine what all the fuss is about, but who needs height when you've got all of the headlines? Nonetheless, Lucy's anatomy should prompt a deeper investigation into how scientists can draw such conclusions. I mean, all her bones seem to be very ape-like, including a small ape-like skull, an ape-like face, long curved ape-like toes for grasping limbs, and an ape-like barrel chest. But you see, the scientist who discovered Lucy, Dr. Donald Johanson, claimed that the knee bones, the pelvis bones, and the fossilized footprints made Lucy an ape man, an ape-to-human ancestor. But our guest today, Dr. Carl Werner, interviewed both Dr. Johanson, who discovered Lucy, and the co-director of the Lucy expedition, Dr. Yves Coppens. Now, during these interviews, Dr. Werner detected 3 instances of fraud involving the ape man claims. And it appears that based on his investigation, all of the celebrations and fanfare about Lucy over the last 50 years might have been just a little bit premature. Dr. Carl Werner is the author and producer of Evolution, the Grand Experiment book and video series, and he just released Volume 4, Episode 4, entitled 9 Categories of Overturned Ape Men. Dr. Werner, welcome to the show.
Be with you, David.
It is great to have you on today. Listen, the evolutionary community widely celebrates Lucy as this pivotal find in human evolution. The one article that we printed out before the program states that Johanson and White placed Afarensis at the base of a tree of ancestry that led to more recent species, such as, you know, Homo, like ourselves, right? So, in other words, I recognize one word here. Johanson and White placed Afarensis at the base of a tree. It wasn't found as this ape-like ancestor at the very bottom of our lineage of humankind, was it?
No, they portrayed her as a small ape-like creature that walked like a human being, which would be very odd to see an ape walking like a human being. And they went with that narrative, and they're still stuck on that narrative, but it really is a false narrative because of the issues that you just described.
You know, the shape of the pelvis is often cited as evidence that she must have walked upright. Those hip bones just seem perfect for a creature turning from an ape-like ancestor into more of a human-like type of thing. It's learning to walk upright. It's evolving into its current form. But there are some things that many people don't consider when it comes to the pelvis of Lucy. Isn't that correct?
Yes, a little anatomy lesson here. This is an ape pelvis, and you can see it's a chimpanzee pelvis. You can see if you turn it sideways, it's flat. Yes. Now, over my shoulder is a human pelvis. The human pelvis turns forward, and you can feel it under your belt in the front of you. When Lucy's pelvis was found, it looked like a chimpanzee pelvis, but Dr. Johanson made a copy of the bones, and then he cut, and ground, and then he reshaped it into a human-shaped pelvis. And see, he started out with a chimp-shaped pelvis, and he said this, and he ends up with a human-shaped pelvis. He says this. And then he says, oh, look, that proves that Lucy walked upright like a human. It was just over-the-top scientific falsification. It's crazy once you understand what he did.
So basically, this researcher, in an attempt to create a great scientific discovery, says, oh, we found this evidence, makes molds of something that looks very chimp-like, and then begins grinding away and gluing it back together again in such a way that it makes it look more human. If this is the case, then this is pretty close to fraud, isn't it?
You know, he believed it. He believed that, like when Lucy died, she went into the bottom of a lake, and an antelope stepped on her pelvis and reshaped it into a human pelvis. So he believed it. I can't say that's fraud. I just say it's over the top, bad science. Yeah.
But over enthusiastic then.
Over enthusiastic.
Okay. Fossilized footprints found near Lucy's remains at Laetoli were also presented as evidence that these creatures were walking upright, bipedalism. What was the nature of Dr. Johanson's claim regarding those footprints, and then the association? What evidence would call that interpretation into question?
Well, the Lucy was found up in Hadar, Afar region of Ethiopia. And these footprints were found 2 countries away in Laetoli, Tanzania by Mary Leakey, 1,000 miles away. And Johansen said that these footprints found 1,000 miles away from Lucy were made by Lucy, and this proved that Lucy walked upright like a human, because these footprints in Laetolia look like human footprints, like just 2 people just walked down the beach. The problem is that Johansen made fraudulent statements about these footprints. He said something to the effect of, there were no other animals, hominids, like ape men or humans, found at Laetoli, Tanzania, other than Lucy-type fossils, afarensis. So he said, who else could have made the footprints, because only Lucy-type bones were found near the footprints. And this is a false, fraudulent statement, because he knew when he made that statement that human skull, and that's fossil LH18, was found at Laetoli, Tanzania. He said there was no human skulls, no human bones found at Laetoli, and yet here is a human skull that was found in Laetoli. And why not this human made the human footprints? I mean, and that was fraudulent.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so are there other aspects of this discovery? I mean, we're talking about something that rocked the scientific community, something that has been highly revered in much of the scientific community, even though there's been skepticism. Are there other examples, intentionally or unintentionally, of this find that weren't considered until much later down the road?
Yeah, Dr. Johansen misled the public and his colleagues. He made this fraudulent statement. He said that all detailed anatomical analysis of the Lucy knee joint indicate that Lucy was fully capable of upright, bipedal gait and posture. In other words, the knee was human, and so that meant Lucy walked upright. But that was a fraudulent statement. Debbie and I interviewed his partner, Dr. Yves Coppens, and asked him, Dr. Coppens, was the knee joint of Lucy human-like or ape-like? And he said it was ape-like. We also interviewed one of his former students when he gave lectures at Berkeley, and Johansen himself said to the graduate students that his own analysis of the knee joint showed that Lucy's knee was right in the middle of the ape knees, not in the human knees. So he misled the public, and it all started with the knee joint. That what gave him justification to alter the pelvis, and then National Geographic ran with it. Then they had the TV show, and it took 50 years to kind of unearth all this terrible information.
There was actually one bone right up in this area right here, just below the skull, that for many years was overlooked and may not have even been part of the same sample of this ape-like creature. It took them a while on that. But there's this saying, Carl, something like, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, maybe it's a duck. Well, it seems like if we've got an ape-like knee joint, and if we've got an ape-like pelvis, and if we've got ape-like skull features, and maybe it is what its scientific name suggests, Australopithecus afarensis, southern ape. Maybe it's nothing more than an ape. You know, I find it sort of curious that later on in one of these articles, they state that from Donald Johansen's perspective, Lucy was the mother of all humanity. And then it goes on to say that subsequent research and other fossil finds have led to some revisions of Lucy's elevated status. The very fact that but it still says, hey, she walked upright. And then goes on to mention Darwin's Descent of Man. Now, of course, Darwin's Descent of Man, that book in and of itself was an incredibly racist volume that basically stated that some people groups were much closer to ape-like ancestors than others, and all sorts of other absolutely horrific claims. But in your research, has this happened multiple times through all of these supposed hominid discoveries?
No, this is a pattern.
Yeah.
They get announced, great fanfare, and about 50 to 100 years later, they get overturned. And there's been so many frauds by the human evolution scientists, my count is up to now 150, that this whole field is now called into question. Is this a valid field, or is this more like a club that's hiding fossils, making false statements? Their colleagues don't correct the false statements when they're live, and then we all find out later, like Neanderthal man, Piltdown man, that it was all bogus. This field has collapsed this year with the discovery of these 150 frauds. This is commonplace in this field, and I'm sorry to say it.
I'm sorry to say it too, because that's not real science. I mean, I know we're all looking for the latest, greatest discovery. I know that we're always wanting to find the next big thing, but at the same time, we have to be intellectually honest. We have to be willing to go where the evidence leads. If you had one thing to say to advise modern science, new researchers, what should we be doing in the future to stay away from all of these embarrassing types of things that you make a discovery and then it falls apart?
Number one, do not accept it unless you personally can go investigate the fossil. Most of these fossils, including Lucy, are not viewable, the originals. That's same with Piltdown, same with Neanderthal. And so unless you can personally verify it, don't believe it. Number two, don't believe it until 50 years has passed, until the scientist dies that's promoting it. Because the evolution scientists tend not to criticize their colleagues until they step back or die and get out of the way. Then they feel comfortable criticizing. But until then, the first 50 years of any fossil is, you might as well ignore it because it's unverifiable.
Yeah, absolutely unverifiable, and we should be more careful in science. Carl, thank you so much for what you do for your research that brings to light, unashamedly, some of these dangerous theories that are being presented as fact, and I would love to have you back on a future episode.
Well, thank you so much, and it's great to be with your audience, too.
Yes, sir. Will, I want you to stick around because we have more content coming your way after the break. Hi, I'm David Rives, and I'm inviting you to visit the Creation Superstore, the largest origins-related store in the world. Not only will you find every book and video title on creation versus evolution, science, but also every resource that teaches us about our origin and how it all takes us back to Genesis, a grand designer, the God of the Bible, and ultimately, yes, the gospel message. Documentaries your family can trust, fossils, teaching videos, children's books, church Bible studies, homeschool supplements, and expert scientific literature. If you can't find a title, call us up and we'll add it. Normally, you'd have to visit dozens of sites to gain access to all of the titles that are out there, and then you would be at a loss to whether the book or video was worth the purchase. But not here. We've curated the best of the best into top 10 lists. And on some of my favorite products, you'll find the Rives rating, where I help guide you on the best resources available for not only those who love history, biblical studies, and creation science, but also great products at the layman level, easy to understand for those who are learning or want their children and grandchildren to be exposed to a biblical worldview. Just look for the Rives rating to find my personal favorites. Use the search bar to look up a topic or follow our menu to sort by ministry, subject, or author. Give us a call at 931-212-7990 as you're browsing. We have ministry volunteers who will do their best to assist you at all hours of the day and even help you place your order. Yes, a real person. Get ready for a secure shopping experience brought to you by the leaders of creation-based research. Your purchase goes towards ministry outreach and also supports the authors and organizations who publish the material, most of whom are personal friends and colleagues of mine. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Welcome back to the show. This week's first Viewer Voices submission comes from Terry on Facebook. She said, I learn something new every day. Love you, GSN. May God bless you and your work to teach us about the Bible. Thank you so much, Terry, for that. Listen, Genesis Science Network has impacted countless lives all around the world in such a powerful way. So we appreciate you being a viewer, we appreciate your support, and we also really appreciate your encouragement. Y'all keep those encouraging statements coming in. Now, our second testimonial is from Edward, who had this to say after visiting the Wonder Center. He said, this is a one-of-a-kind science museum that is going to be a big tourist destination very soon, I expect. I love how they consistently give credit to God as creator of all of the universe. He said, the planetarium show and the Tesla coil show were unlike anything that I have ever seen. I will be going back and have already told many of my friends to put this place on their list. Thank you, Edward, for that. I hope that so many people have it on their travel plans to come visit the Wonder Center just outside of Nashville in the very near future. It is a destination and attraction that you will not want to miss, and an educational, inspirational experience. We love hearing how the Holy Spirit is using our ministry to inspire and encourage fellow believers and also to reach skeptics alike. So reach out to us on social media and send us an email at comments@genesissciencenetwork.com. For now, it's time for the Genesis Science Minute. This week, we're jumping into the field of geology to explore evidence of catastrophic events shaping our planet's surface. So let's take a look right now. Genesis 7:19 says that at the time of Noah's flood, the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. Catastrophism has been observed to form geological formations like the Grand Canyon very quickly. Flowing water easily moves an unbelievable amount of material, forming soft layers that rapidly lithify or harden, similar to the hard rock layers we find around the world. Recent catastrophic events and the subsequent geologic formations should be more than enough reason for us to take a second look at Noah's flood and rapid erosion. And certainly more than enough to call into question the supposed millions of years that are said to be necessary to produce massive wonders like the Grand Canyon. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
For more information, visit David Rives Ministries at davidrives.com. DavidRives.com.
Now, before we move on, we want to take a moment for our ministry update. Now, we've got some great stories and upcoming events that reflect the heart of our mission. First up, we're excited to announce the speaker for our upcoming Unwrapped event, Helmut Welk. Helmut will be joining us to share his expertise and passion for biblical chronology while advocating for a return to the literal reading of Genesis. Mr. Welk will be examining the biblical account of the first 4 days of Genesis, focusing on what God says about how He created the universe. He's also going to be discussing why the sequence of events, such as the formation of stars and supernova remnants, fit the biblical account far better than the Big Bang Theory. Now, following closely on the heels of our Unwrapped event, we're hosting our annual Astronomy Day and Star Party. I'm pretty pumped about this one. I want you to mark your calendars for a full day of celestial wonder. We've got a fantastic lineup of activities planned. Throughout the day, we will feature a series of expert speakers who will present on a range of subjects related to astronomy and cosmology. We're going to have breakout sessions with engaging interactive sessions led by PhD scientists and astronomers and other experts. You'll be able to experience the grandeur of the cosmos in our state-of-the-art planetarium with an immersive show designed to spark curiosity and wonder. As the sun sets, join us for a spectacular stargazing event in our parking lot. We're praying for good weather, where we're going to have telescopes set up for some incredible night sky viewing. You'll be able to look through some massive observatory class scopes. These events are a wonderful opportunity to learn, to explore, to connect with others who share a passion for science and astronomy. You're going to want to get your tickets for this event immediately before we're sold out. You know, at the heart of our ministry is a passion for uplifting, educating, and inspiring others while pointing them right back to Christ. And your prayers and support are vital to our mission. We invite you to expand our reach by becoming a monthly donor today. Your tax-deductible contributions are essential for maintaining this important work. To donate or learn more, visit our website or call us at 931-212-7990. Stay connected with us by liking and subscribing on YouTube and Facebook, and I want to thank you for your continued support. Your support makes all of this possible. Now we're shifting our focus to the rhino in this week's Heavens Declare segment. We'll discuss how God has uniquely designed rhinos with traits that aid their survival. So let's take a look right now.
Some of the biggest mammals in the world live in Africa. Right now, I'm in South Africa, leading about 40 people on a photo safari, and I've had the opportunity to see many of these massive mammals for myself, including the armored beast. It's called the rhinoceros. What an incredible sight. Most people think of Africa when they think of rhinos, but did you know that there are actually only 2 species, the black and white rhinos, that live in Africa? 3 other rhino species, the Sumatran and the Javan and the Indian, are scattered throughout various nations in Asia. All 5 rhino species are considered some of the most endangered species in the world. The most famous feature of the rhino? Their horns. They're actually quite valuable, so rhinos are being poached into extinction. Even rhinos in zoos have been killed just for their horns. Now, some safaris and zoos have tranquilized the rhinos to remove their horns, just so it wouldn't be killed by poachers. Rhinos used to live in northern Europe and even in Russia. Well, how is that possible? God designed each created kind, including the rhino kind, with an incredible amount of genetic variety so that they could adapt to a wide range of environments. So rhinos used to have the genetic information to produce a thick, shaggy coat. This allowed rhinos that were known as woolly rhinos to thrive for a time in colder regions. Of course, that actually wouldn't help a rhino survive in Africa or Southern Asia. So the genetic information for thick coats, it was eventually weeded out. Now rhinos, they might look big and clunky, but don't be fooled. They can actually run 30 to 40 miles an hour if they need to. They've got a limited sense of sight, but listen, their sense of hearing and smell is keen. Smell is how they communicate with each other. The smell of their dung is actually very unique to each rhino. They can tell other rhinos whether they're male or female, young or old. They look pretty dirty because they'll lounge in the mud to cover that sensitive skin. It helps them stay protected from sunburn and insect bites. But they also allow oxpeckers to ride around on their backs. Those birds not only eat insects, but they also will alert the host rhino to danger. It's an example of a symbiotic relationship, mutualism, as the oxpecker gets a free meal of insects, but the rhino, he gets a free insect removal treatment. Rhinos, the second largest land mammals, are a testament to the creativity of the designer. Their strong, armored-looking bodies should remind us of the strength of our Lord, who has made everything for His glory and calls us to be good stewards of what He has made, including the rhinoceros. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
Oh, that's so neat. We got to get really, really close to some of these amazing creatures last time I was in Africa, and I cannot wait to go back with you. We can only take 40 people, so sign up soon. It's time for a quick break, but I want you to stick around because we're about to explore new research involving lampreys and their potential significance in the context of evolutionary theory. Or is it? Dr. Jerry Bergman will be joining us to offer his perspective next on the Genesis Science Report. Tune in to the Genesis Science Network Knowledge Block as you learn real, cutting-edge science, not evolutionary theories and agendas. Whether you're in junior or senior high, a homeschooler, or an adult looking for higher education, we bring you a fresh perspective each weekday. Our goal is to equip you with another block to build and strengthen your faith, giving you solid evidence. Join us each weekday at 11 a.m. Central. I want to thank you for supporting GSN this year. Your support is helping us send this broadcast to millions of households around the globe. You know, in a society where the theories of Darwinian evolution are bombarding our youth via schools and universities and through peer pressure, we need to saturate the airwaves with the truth of real biblical science, and you are making this happen. Your one-time, monthly, or generous end-of-year tax-deductible love gift keeps this network streaming 24/7 at no cost to our viewers. Thank you for your support. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Is there a biblical view of animal rights?
We've actually got a report that was in one of our British newspapers a little while back. Don't kill mosquitoes, let them take blood donation. Now here's a great example of being futile in your thinking, right?
Right.
At what point should we be looking after animals? At what point should we be treating animals as if they were humans? So it's a really popular topic.
On Wonders Without Number. And welcome back to the Genesis Science Report. As we jump into the next discussion, let me introduce you to a strange little creature called a lamprey. Known for their unique biology and their role in the ecosystem, lampreys have been the focus of scientific inquiry for decades now. Our next discussion revolves around a creature that many biologists have spent their lives studying. Now, while many evolutionists celebrate these creatures as crucial to understanding vertebrate origins, researchers at Northwestern University propose that understanding gene networks in these creatures could reveal links between jawless and jawed vertebrates. That is, if they evolved from a common ancestor. Joining us to dissect the details is Dr. Jerry Bergman. Now, Dr. Bergman has 9 college degrees, including 2 PhDs, and is the author of 60 published books. He has taught at the college level for over 40 years and has presented the creation message at over 400 different churches. Dr. Bergman, it's great to have you on the show today.
And it's great to be here.
Listen, do you have any experience with this topic, with lamprey research?
A lot. I dissected a lamprey when I was in college, and also when I taught biology and zoology especially. We spent a lot of time, believe it or not, dissecting lampreys.
Interesting. Okay, why? What makes lampreys in particular so useful in dissections, biological research, etc.?
The main reason is that they are a problem. They are blood suckers. They basically suck a good fish, trout, and so on. And so got to get rid of them. And so therefore they're cheap. You can buy them very easily, a couple of dollars a piece. And so therefore they are commonly used. Also, we dissect a lot of ordinary fish. Lamprey is classified as fish-like, actually. And lamprey is a good creature to dissect. And I could add, they are the ugliest thing I've ever in my entire life dissected. They are really, really ugly, just absolutely ugly. And that's because the whole front is a mouth, basically. They're jawless, they don't have jaws. And so the theory is, ironically, that they evolved from jawed fish.
And they really do. They look almost like a monster, like it's about to eat you with all of these little protrusions on their mouth, and then the mouth opens up. And yeah, it's a little scary. What kind of insights have scientists gained by studying them?
Well, the idea is that they evolved from fish that swim around, that have fins and so on. And so they're lost a lot of structures and gained a lot of other structures. And so therefore their intrigue is as to why, as to what's happening. And
Okay.
actually, they haven't talked about this a lot in the literature because basically they don't know. And this may be why this study you're looking at now is so important.
Yes, so this study, the Northwestern study, claims to have uncovered evolutionary links by using gene analysis. They say lampreys possess a jaw-dropping evolutionary origin. Are there any potential problems with using genetic comparisons as evidence for evolutionary theory?
Well, what they do is they compare certain genes in fish and then compare that with lampreys. And they find, of course, differences. That's pretty obvious. So if gene A is this way in fish, and then that gene or similar gene is different in lampreys, they assume, therefore, that's the change required to evolve from fish, lampreys. The fallacy of that is major. Just because you see a difference doesn't prove that that difference was the result of evolution and that this evolved into that as a result of these changes in genes. You see a difference, that's there. But of course, you can only speculate that difference is due to evolutionary changes.
Right. That's the problem here is you're looking at change, or you're looking at a difference, or you're looking at a differentiation within species or animal kinds or whatever it is, and then you're making assumptions about the past of that creature by saying, well, maybe this one evolved into this using this feature. In fact, the report itself, while it's talking about the research, it's talks about a POU5 gene, a key stem cell regulator, and it says losing this factor may have limited the ability. So loss of a gene. When we talk about loss, we don't see that as typically evolutionary benefit, do we?
Right, and of course fish have certain genes, lampreys have other genes, and so therefore they say, well, they're lost. We call that in science, they're looking at this through evolutionary glasses. So they see it from what evolution says should be there. And so therefore, they're not looking at what's there, they're looking at the distortion of what they see because of these evolutionary glasses that they are wearing.
Well, expound just a little bit. Why don't evolutionary scientists recognize this problem of having a bias there?
Well, they don't see it as a bias, they see evolution as fact, it's true. And therefore, these genes had to have changed to evolve from a fish, like trout, into a lamprey. Therefore, they found the differences. Therefore, this is what caused the fish to evolve from fish into the lamprey. I would say, it would seem by looking at them that lampreys would evolve into fish and not vice versa. But of course, that's not the theory for other reasons.
Right, right. So just because you have an organism, or let's even say something that we can all look at, a bicycle, a unicycle, a motorcycle, a car, you line them up at a nice long lineage. You know, you've got a one-wheeled unicycle, and then after millions of years, surely it evolved into a bicycle, and then it gained an engine and became a motorcycle, and then the motorcycle realized that it could actually benefit and get greater traction if it had four wheels, so then it became an automobile, a car, and so forth and so on. When you line things up in a pretty manner, just like they're doing with lampreys and fish and all of these other types of evolutionary ancestors, you come away saying, oh, this looks logical, this seems to support our narrative. But this research that is coming out now, what are some ways that it actually challenges the entire evolutionary framework?
Well, it does, because you have to explain the intermediate forms. And therefore, this gene evolved into that gene. Of course, they're looking for the pluripotent genes, which have the ability to differentiate into one type of gene or another type of gene. And so therefore, the problem with that is when we look at differences, we don't see logical intermediate. How do you go from a fish swimming around very effectively with its fins, losing the fins, and then becoming a bloodsucker? They can't explain that. In fact, lampreys have always been a problem for evolution. And therefore, when they find these differences, they figure, well, gee, we're helping to answer the question is where'd they come from?
Again, that's only from an evolutionary narrative. When you look at the fossil record, do we see fish losing their fins and then losing other features and then losing their jaws and then transitioning into a lamprey? Is there such a thing as a transitional form where you can watch this taking place within the fossil record?
Well, no, there isn't, and that's always been a problem. But of course, just because there's no transitional forms, evolutionists would say, well, it still happened, but it happened so fast that there, I know that's silly, but it happened so fast that indeed we don't have any evidence because of the rapid changes that were made in the animal as it evolved.
And that's where punctuated equilibrium would come into the picture, and basically it's the idea that yes, evolution takes hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years of time to really change an organism, but an organism can live, die, thrive, survive for long periods of time, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years, and then finally, boom, it hits this point where it realizes it needs to evolve, and boom, punctuated equilibrium takes over, evolution takes over, and you've got an entirely different creature. Dr. Bergman, I want to thank you for being with us today, for sharing your expertise, and I'd love to have you back in the future.
Okay, thank you. It's good to see you again.
It is great to see you. And that is it for today. I want to thank you for joining us on the Genesis Science Report. We're bringing you breaking news in science, connecting it to our Christian faith, and challenging the atheistic narrative, the atheistic assumptions that have been so baked into our memories today that it's almost overtaken the scientific community. Until next time on Genesis Science Report, I want to remind you to keep looking up. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.